standing here at Dingwall Museum, and as you can see, the stone is visible through the window. The cross side is visible to anybody walking down the high street, and once the museum opens later in the year, they will of course be able to see the other side. The stone was found 2 years ago in February 2019, and we'd like to tell you the story about how it got to Dingwall Museum. Not long after I moved to Conan Bridge, I decided to walk along the river path, and I walked for approximately 2 miles along what turned out to be an old coffin route, and came across a very old burial ground. And just along here you'll see a stone. It was originally a coffin stone that they rested the coffins on. So I had no idea what I expected to find on this walk, and it was about this point here, as I was walking along, that I noticed through the trees a few stones and one headstone, and I thought, my goodness, I wonder what this is. And as I approached it, I realised that I was looking at a burial ground. I was immediately fascinated by the place. It has a certain atmosphere to it, and I've always loved the sound of the river and the wind in the trees here. And my overall feeling was, why is it here? It seems to be in the middle of nowhere. And that's what led me to start doing some research on the site. Research showed that records went back to 1227, and it was associated with the ecclesiastical centre at Fortrose. As well as this, there were routes going past the burial ground, including a ford which crossed the river, so there were people in the area. Where Conan House is, just up the lane a bit, it was built in 1758. There was a township called Lochie Reek, which had an alehouse and records of travellers staying there. As well as that, I found out there was a battle here. They used to hold Candlemas fairs here, and there was even a Conan Kelpie that lived in a pool just down there in the river and killed someone in the chapel. So I got permission from the landowner to survey the burial ground, as I said. I should point out that the burial ground is privately owned. It is owned by the MacInnes of Gairloch. We started down at this end, and there was a wide variety of stones, from our earliest dated table tomb here, which is dated 1710, commemorating Anne MacInnes, a beautiful stone, to lines of almost unmarked boulders, obviously an area used by poorer people of the parish that couldn't afford a commemoration stone. There were quite a few table tombs in the burial ground, and we also noticed quite a few grave slabs like these that just had a thin covering of moss or leaves on them, which we cleared back and recorded. And as we worked our way through the burial ground, we came to an area just over here where we actually discovered 5 pre-Reformation medieval cross slabs, which we uncovered, recorded, photographed, and were later done by John Borland, who was working for Historic Environment Scotland at the time. One day I was recording a line of grave slabs. I started to record one which was situated here, whose edge was sticking out of the ground, and the top was covered in about 10 centimetres of rotting ponticum leaves and small fibrous roots. I started to uncover from the top, the southeast end, and found the inscription Hugh and Alexander Macaulay 1796, and noticed that curiously this inscription respected a very deep lamination line on top of the stone. I saw a bit of carving which seemed a bit odd, and I cleared a bit more and I saw a knee, a lower leg and a foot. I'll never forget the moment when I saw that foot, and I really couldn't believe what I was seeing. I just thought, no, it can't be. And we both looked and thought, this needs to be investigated further, and we called in 2 other members of NoSAS with a lot more experience than us, and they came down and we cleared back the whole stone, and we could see that it was definitely a Pictish stone. Not a complete one, we have about 2/3 of it. And we immediately informed Kirsty Cameron, the Highland archaeologist.
I was initially told about a new discovery that was looking promising. It seemed to be at the time important enough to justify taking it out of the burial ground and preserving it much better than it was going to be just lying there, slowly degrading. I was talking to various people in Historic Environment Scotland, to people from Treasure Trove, whether it fall under their remit, but it seemed to lie in a grey area, and no one was actually going to take it on and to fund it to come out of the burial ground and to be preserved. So I think at that stage I was looking to ideally get it formally taken up by NoSAS, they seem to be in the best position to take it on as a project.
So the few of us who knew about it went to the NoSAS committee and we discussed it and unanimously agreed that we would take this on. It was a huge undertaking, quite nerve-wracking. We had never done anything like this before, and we knew we would have to fundraise eventually, but we couldn't do to begin with because we couldn't let anybody know this stone was here until it was taken to a place of safety. So how were we going to pay for the stone to be removed? Well, it was decided that both NoSAS and the Pictish Art Society, John Borland was extremely helpful and supportive, we would put our own money into the pot and pay for the removal of the stone. Tenders went out. This was a learning curve in itself. We formed a small subcommittee within the NoSAS committee, and tenders went out, and eventually Graciela Ainsworth was appointed to take the stone away for conservation. This took a while to organise, but eventually the big day came.
It's quite remarkable. This is one thing about...
Oh, goodness me. Next time tell me you are.
There's definitely something on this side. Yeah. Without a doubt.
It was actually quite breathtaking. It's always nice to know that there are still things like that waiting to be discovered. So yes, it was clearly a nationally important find that had been made. It was, significant, certainly breathtaking and inspiring as well. And obviously as well at that time it was quite a burden to be taken on because it couldn't stay in the ground. It was in a sensitive location and it would cost money. So all these things had to come to the plate to find a solution to protect it for the future.
Underneath there.
No. It's definitely carving.
A big cross by any chance? Couldn't quite see.
I remember, when we were digging it to find the size, nobody knew what was underneath it. We all thought there would have been something underneath on the final phase, unless it had been an unfinished stone. But we were feeling under. I can feel a lump, but nobody knew what was there till it was lifted. And I think then some people were taking photographs and seeing what was underneath, but it was hard to see at the time because it was obviously lifted, wrapped up, and then taken away to be conserved.
After the stone was removed, there were a few of us left at the burial ground, and we put in place this replacement marker stone that Sutherland Stoneworks had carved for us. We put in a replica stone because, as I mentioned earlier, the first thing I saw on the stone was an inscription. So the Pictish stone had been reused in 1796 as a grave marker for Hugh and Alexander Macaulay. Perhaps they were either stillborn or died in infancy. But we wanted to respect the place where they had been buried, and this is why we installed this stone which replicates the original inscription. Here we are back at Dingwall Museum. So the stone is in Graciela Ainsworth's van, heading for her workshop, and we pressed the publicity button. A prepared press statement done by James McComas, our filmmaker, was let loose. Great excitement was caused, and we were on radio and TV as word about the discovery of the stone spread. But we had to get on with raising the money to conserve this stone, and along with the Pictish Arts Society, and to coincide with the Highland Archaeology Fortnight Conference, we launched a crowdfunding appeal. John Borland gave a talk revealing the two Pictish dragons that were on the other side, and this caused great excitement.
It was nice to see not just the cross, but the additional decoration. And, having sent a photo of that to John Borland, he was like, okay, they're massive dragon heads. So it's times like, okay, we've got massive dragon heads. It was quite a thing. I mean, to hear also from John Borland that he hadn't seen anything quite like that before. Obviously every one of these is unique, but it was nice to find out that Arwen had that particular feature as well. So it was what we'd all hoped for.
We applied for funding, and we had several major funders. But as well as this, we wanted to involve local people, and we held lots of events in the local area. People gave individual donations, which were very welcome, and we managed to raise enough money to give Graciela the go-ahead to conserve the stone, which she did beautifully, and you will hear about this in the talk following this video. The stone eventually arrived back in Dingwall Museum. In the meantime, we had been working with local tradesmen who were very willing to help the museum, and NoSAS, who were leading on this project, and their sort of Highland attitude of, yes, we can do this, let's get on with it, was amazing. A lot of work had to be done within the museum to prepare for the stone's placement, and you will hear from people who were involved in this. We have Stuart Bain, who's a monumental sculptor, and Jim Evans, who's a structural steel engineer.
Well, it was nice to be involved. Knowing Ian in the museum for a good number of years, trying just to do a bit of help to get it at. A few sleepless nights wondering how we would do it because of where we humped it, but we couldn't get any mechanical things in to lift it, so it was basically main that we had to, and we managed quite well. Nice to see it that. I could sleep then. Well, I've done a few bits and pieces for Ian at the museum for this last few years, and when Roland got involved, when he got involved, Ian phoned me to come down to see what we could do. So we come up with the idea of the steel bracings, and everything went fine, everything went okay. So it's nice to see it is, when you read it, it's nice. It is nice. It's good for Dingwall.
So it's really good that it could go to the most local museum and find a place in the nearest big town and stay in the county.
It's suddenly got a lot better here, and I'm happier now than I was.
These are stones collected from the Ari Quarry, which is Conan River gravel, and I'm just spreading them around the base of the Pictish stone to cover the supports for the metalwork, and just the last finishing touch really. Stone's going on. Here we are, here we go.
Seeing the stone there is a real achievement, and there's so many people who took part in getting it there.
We are really pleased to receive this in. We have our own Dingwall Stone in the churchyard. There's the Strathpeffer Eagle Stone and the Conan Stone from that direction, all centred on here. This one being found and brought to life again is going to add something to our high street and the area. The whole Pictish trail is opening up again, so over the next year or two you'll see more and more of that, looking at the stones all around this area. Yes, the museum being closed all summer instead of open has been a bit of a downer. But next year we would expect to open up when the rest of the world opens up with us. You'll all be able to come in and see it properly. This might be very good for the high street. Certainly very good for us, and certainly very good for our history. So thank you all for coming.
A number of months ago, quite a number of months ago, we were offered this stone when it was found in Conan. We were very delighted and really surprised that the Archaeology Society recommended that Dingwall Museum should have this for the addition to the collection.
Had obviously the soft reveal where it was looking beautiful on Christmas on Dingwall High Street. I know that can be a bigger deal still to come with community involvement and the people of Dingwall celebrating on the street. Who knows what's going to happen this year, but that's a hope. The wider sort of project are that we are hoping to get a replica stone put up in Conan Bridge. It'll be at the gateway to the village. So we're hoping that obviously the people from Conan Bridge are going to buy into their own Pictish heritage as well, and it's going to be a huge new feature for everyone to embrace, and to again not only the opening in Dingwall at the museum, but we're hoping to have a really strong community buy-in in Conan Village itself.
So why was this stone here? The burial ground itself is a mound, and Hugh Miller, the geologist, once described it as probably having been an island. The LiDAR survey shows that, if not an island, it was at very least a mound on the end of a promontory sticking out into the River Conan. So it was a very visible site, and the stone would have been seen by anybody passing by, either on the route beside the burial ground or crossing the river by the ford. As well as this, it was an early religious site. We know it was dedicated to St. Bride and probably went back much earlier than that. And I can imagine this stone sitting outside an early religious structure, as is probable at Rosemarkie and maybe Port Mahomet, and so being noticed by everybody. We only have 2/3 of it. 1/3 is still in the ground because it was knocked over. We don't know when or why. Was it something to do with the Reformation or when the chapel went out of use? And then it was reused as a grave marker. I really don't think it will have been moved far because its stone is the same as the other memorials, local red sandstone. So it would have been standing here telling a story. And what that story is, I'll leave the experts to tell you about.